Joining us right now on the WCHE guest hotline is Walter Block. He's a libertarian economist, author, professor at Loyola University, and he is a senior fellow at the Mises Institute. Walter, how are you today?
Pretty good, thanks. Thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, happy to have you here. Now, this country is in a very precarious position in my mind, especially economically. You're looking at this conversation about the debt ceiling taking front and center. Will this be the issue, if the debt ceiling is in fact raised, that ultimately will be the downfall in terms of the economics of this country if you continue to spend at this level?
Well, I think any one thing won't be the downfall. I'm not a Chicken Little. The sky isn't falling. It can be recovered if we adopt the correct policies. One of them would be not raising the debt ceiling. Another one would be raising the debt ceiling but lowering the deficit, lowering spending, lowering regulations, getting rid of the Fed, engaging in all sorts of economic, sensible projects.
Now let's go least likely to most likely. What do you think is the most likely outcome here? Is it going to be cutting the deficit? Is it going to be eliminating the Fed? What is the most likely, in your opinion, to happen in the near future, and what do you think is the least likely?
Well, I think the most likely is just business as usual.
Yeah.
We'll raise the debt ceiling. We'll keep the deficit up. We'll keep the Fed going. Obama will probably win in the next election, and Bernanke will reign supreme at the Fed, and we'll just have a sort of a slow slide toward PIGS, P-I-G-S, that would be Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. The problem children of Europe will become a sort of a problem child, not of Europe, but of North America. That's the most likely.
And the least likely?
Well, the least likely, which would be the best, would be Ron Paul wins, or Gary Johnson, perhaps. He's pretty good. And we get rid of the Fed, and we don't raise the debt ceiling, and we reduce the deficit, and the government stops spending money like a drunken sailor. That would be the least likely and the best, but my read of the populace is that people are economically ignorant, they're economically illiterate, and they're not going to vote for that sort of a thing, unfortunately.
Walter, what's it going to take for people to see the light in terms of the economic issues that are out there? Because people are hurting. I mean, there are a lot of people without jobs, there are a lot of people who are underpaid, and yet, as you said, there doesn't seem to be a lot of focus being put on the economy in terms of how to fix it, how to right the ship, but so many people are focused on this sideshow of the Obama birth certificate. What's it going to take for people to wake up and see the light on this issue?
Well, they've got to read up on economics, and not only economics in general, but specifically I'm an Austrian economist, and my heroes, my gurus, are people like Mises and Rothbard and Hayek and Ron Paul. And if they read up on that and came to agree with that, I think that the country would be on a much more even keel, indeed a magnificent situation. But I don't know. I deal with freshmen in economics every year, and they come to me from high school, and they're full of socialist, interventionistic, fascist kinds of ideas. Government's got to do this, government's got to do that. We've learned nothing from the fall of East Germany and the fall of the Soviet Union. We should have learned that socialism doesn't work. Instead, we're applying it in this country.
You're listening to the Wake Up Call with Matt Lombardo on 1520 WCHE. Check out the program online at WCHE1520.com. We're chatting Walter Block. Walter, another big issue is the cutting of the spending, and this budget was all about the Republicans, led by the Tea Parties and Rand Paul, saying that they wanted to go into this process seeking cuts of $100 billion. Well, they settled for $38 billion, and when you put the microscope on the cuts that were actually made, they were in the hundreds of millions rather than billions dollars amounts. What's it going to take to cut spending, and what do you think in the 2012 budget that's going to be front and center in September is going to be the level of cuts that you would deem to be acceptable?
Well, the level of cuts that I would be deemed acceptable would be very draconian. I believe that we should not only make cuts in the military, but bring home all the troops. I believe in a strong defense, but not an offense. And right now we've got, 800 military bases in almost 200 different countries. That's not defense, that's offense. I favor a strong Coast Guard. Nobody should come in and attack us. But we've got soldiers all over the world. I don't know what they're doing in Japan or Germany. I know what they're doing in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I don't much like it. Right. And I don't think we should be messing in Libya either. So if we cut a lot out of the military budget, that would be good. Another one would be the Social Security. Now, Social Security is a ridiculous concept. It's very undemocratic. What we're saying is that people are too stupid to save for their retirement years. Well, if they're so stupid, why are we letting them vote? And if we let them vote, how can we trust them to vote for politicians, given the stupidity of the electorate, that will right the balance and do the right thing by them? No. I think that what this does is it breaks down family ties between young people and old people. We only had Social Security in 1933, 1934. Before that, old people weren't starving in the streets or anything like that. They would save for their older years, and if they didn't, their children would help them. And if they didn't, we would always have private charity. So we should get rid of Social Security. It's a Ponzi scheme, and it's incompatible with democracy. And don't let me get started on socialized medicine, although I'm willing to.
Walter, I think the issue that people are most focused on right now, the one that affects them every week, every other day, is the gas prices. Here in the Delaware Valley, you're at $4.05 a gallon in some places. People are predicting upwards of $5, $6, $7, $8 worth of gasoline per gallon as a price point by the middle of the summer, which is pretty troubling to think about. At what point do we say enough is enough, and do you start to infuse the market with more product, drilling for oil here in this country, tapping the reserves to lower the price point? Because in my opinion, this is all because of speculation and because of supply and demand.
Well, there's a movie, Atlas Shrugged, by Ayn Rand, and in that movie they talk about a gas price of $37.50 a gallon, so it makes your $8 a gallon look puny. I don't believe it's speculation. What speculators do is they don't raise prices. They iron out the oscillations of prices. So it's not speculators. It's Ben Bernanke. Ben the paper hanger Bernanke is inflating, and it's not just gas prices. It's everything.
Right.
People are now making candy bars smaller because they're afraid to raise prices because they'll be seen as price gougers. And Obama's talking about speculators. No, you're right. I think it's supply and demand. And the point is that we have a lot of dollars chasing a relatively fixed number of goods. We've had all these quantitative easings, QE1, QE2. I think they're talking about QE3 now. This is not Queen Elizabeth. This is quantitative easing. And this boosts prices of everything. And, yes, I agree with you, too, that we should have more gas drilling in ANWR, and we should welcome the Alberta tar sands. But I don't think that the right way to approach this is from the side of products, because products can only increase at a couple of percent a year. The key is the dollar. Now, the Fed started in 1913, and then a dollar was a dollar, and now a dollar is worth 4 cents. So the Fed has presided over the dissipation of 96% of the value of our dollar. Our dollar is becoming a joke. Look at what the price of gold is. I mean, price of gold is a sort of an inverse indication of what's going on with the dollar.
And silver's at $47 an ounce. Right. So even silver is at an all-time high. Right. What's it going to take to get value back into the dollar, and do you see that even happening?
Well, I see us I don't see it happening unless Ron Paul gets elected, or Rand Paul, or Gary Johnson. Well, Gary Johnson's a little weak on the monetary field. But if Ron Paul were elected, I think within a month or so, the Fed would be gone and we'd be on a gold standard. Then we'd have 100% backed dollar by gold, and there'd be no more inflation ever.
Before I let you go, Walter, I appreciate you taking the time. You've talked a lot about Ron Paul, and what I find interesting about Ron Paul was the transition of him, because in 2008, people looked at him like the kook, like the crazy uncle, and they laughed him off stage, and yet shining light on the Federal Reserve, decreasing spending, and cutting the deficit have all been talking points for the Republicans in the most recent weeks and months. Is it now the time right for him? Is he going to get more acceptance during his run this time around than he did 4 years ago?
Well, I think so. I mean, certainly the election of his son Rand Paul in Kentucky in the Senate is an indication. I understand he's got another son or two. One of them is going to run for Senate in Texas. I'm not sure about that. Certainly, Ron will do much better than he did before. If he can just but win the Republican nomination, I think he's got a good chance, because he can out-left Obama, and he can outright Obama. I mean, he can outright him on the free market, free enterprise. Ron is a free enterpriser, and Barack Obama is a socialist fascist. He can out-left him on the military, because Barack Obama is following the Bush policies of militarism, and Ron Paul is a peaceful person.
It'll be very interesting to see. Walter, I appreciate you taking the time, my friend.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show.
You got it. That was Walter Block. He is a libertarian economist, author, and he's a professor at Loyola University.